On February 1st, 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia was streaking across the sky, just minutes away from landing after a 16-day mission in space. But it never made it home. Today, we're going to unpack the story of that tragic final flight and the truly remarkable journey of one of its astronauts, Kalpana Chawla. So, to really get what happened, you have to go back to those last fateful minutes. What should have been a perfectly routine re-entry sequence, well, it turned into a catastrophe, unfolding live for the entire world to see. Look at how fast everything just fell apart. At 8:44 in the morning, Columbia hits the atmosphere. Everything looks totally normal. But then, just 9 minutes later, Mission Control starts noticing some weird readings, something about tire pressure. By 8:59, they get one last broken transmission. And then, nothing. 12 minutes later, people are seeing debris falling from the sky over Texas. In just 16 minutes, it went from a routine landing to a national tragedy. Those were the last words ever heard from Commander Rick Husband. He was just responding to a message from the ground, and the line, it just cut out. The silence that followed was, well, it was chilling. And here's the crazy part. Before NASA could even figure out what was happening and make an official announcement, the public was already seeing it. People were looking up, cameras were rolling, and they saw these fiery streaks just breaking apart. It was this horrifying, surreal moment where the world realized the worst had happened, not from a press conference, but just by looking up at the sky. To really understand the weight of a disaster like this, you have to know the people who were lost. So let's focus on the incredible journey of mission specialist Kalpana Chawla, who was the first woman of Indian origin to ever fly to space. Kalpana's story starts in a small town in India. She was the youngest of 4 kids in a pretty conservative family. And get this, when she started school, she hadn't even been given a formal name yet. So she picked her own. She chose Kalpana, which means imagination. And honestly, what a perfect name for a girl who was already dead set on defying what everyone expected of her. You know, her father wasn't keen on her path, and teachers told her to pick a more traditional career, but she was just unstoppable. Her journey was this relentless climb, from India to the US, earning advanced degrees, and finally landing at NASA. In 1994, she was picked out of more than 4,000 applicants to become an astronaut. Just incredible. This is what she said after her very first spaceflight back in 1997. And it just perfectly captures her whole perspective, right? That when you're up there, all the borders on the map just vanish, and you realize we're all just part of this huge cosmic neighborhood. So what was this mission, STS-107, even about? This wasn't about building the space station or delivering a satellite. Nope. This was a pure, dedicated science mission that had been in the works for years. For 16 days, that shuttle was basically a floating laboratory. The crew worked around the clock in 2 different shifts, just cranking through about 80 different experiments for universities, for companies, and even for school kids from all over the world. And the research they were doing was so varied. I mean, they were studying how cancer cells grow differently in space, which could give us new clues about tumors. They were looking at crystal growth, how fire behaves. They even had student projects watching how ants and spiders and silkworms get around in zero-G. And here's the silver lining, if you can call it that. Because they were constantly beaming data back to Earth, almost a third of all that research was saved.
Now, for a story that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, amidst all the wreckage, investigators found something unbelievable. Tucked away in these shielded aluminum canisters, a group of tiny roundworms in petri dishes had actually survived the shuttle's breakup and reentry. Their descendants even got to fly on another shuttle mission years later. Just amazing.
Okay, so this brings us to the central question, the big mystery. What went wrong? It wasn't pilot error. It wasn't a mistake the astronauts made. The chain of events that doomed Columbia actually started just seconds after it blasted off the launch pad. It just sounds impossible, doesn't it? A piece of foam insulation weighing less than 2 pounds, taking down a 100-ton marvel of engineering like the space shuttle? Well, the answer comes down to some simple but absolutely brutal physics. See, the key here isn't the weight of the foam, it's the incredible speed. We're talking over 500 miles per hour. At that velocity, that little 750-gram piece of foam carried a massive amount of kinetic energy.
It slammed into the leading edge of the shuttle's left wing with enough force to punch a hole right through its vital heat shield. And this is probably the most tragic part of the whole story. The crew up in space, they had no idea what had happened. They were completely unaware of the danger. But on the ground, some NASA engineers knew about that foam strike. They were worried. They actually requested that spy satellites be used to get a picture of the wing to see how bad the damage was. But that request was shut down by senior management. The official investigation that followed concluded that this wasn't just a technical problem, it was an institutional failure. See, foam strikes had actually happened on a bunch of previous flights, and over time, NASA management started to see it as an acceptable risk. A maintenance issue, not a life-threatening danger. It's a phenomenon called the normalization of deviance, where something wrong happens so often it starts to feel normal. And in this case, that proved to be absolutely fatal. So what happened after the tragedy? Let's take a look at how this disaster forever changed the future of spaceflight and how the memory of the crew, including Kalpana Chawla, continues to live on. Well, the shuttle program was put on hold for 2.5 years. NASA made major safety changes, including a complete redesign of the foam on that external tank. After that, the shuttle started flying again, all the way until 2011, finishing a total of 135 missions over a 30-year history. And the legacy of the crew is honored in so many ways. You see it in the engineering changes that made future flights safer. You see it in a school program that Kalpana started in India that continues to send students to NASA. And you see it in memorials that stretch from right here on Earth all the way to the surface of Mars. But maybe the most lasting tribute of all, the one that truly speaks to the permanence of their memory, is written, literally, in the stars. Her unbelievable journey from that small town in India to the vastness of space is now forever etched into the map of our solar system. It's a permanent reminder of a life that was all about imagination, about exploration, and about constantly pushing the boundaries of what we all think is possible.